Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us for our Provider and Case Manager bi-monthly webinar. This is the last of the series for this year, but we will pick them back up next year. So before we get started, just want to go over our normal pieces about accessibility and how to use live captions. So to use live captions, you can turn on those live captions and subtitles by selecting the captions and subtitles on in your video controls. And to change the caption language, you would select settings, captions and subtitles, and choose the language you would like to use. If you have a question during this webinar, there is a Q&A section on the right side of your screen. You can type your question in the box and select send. So your questions are only visible to the presenters, and we will answer questions as time permits. And then lastly, to sign in for today's meetings, in that same Q&A box on the right side of your screen, you will see a link that I posted for you to do the sign-in sheet. So you just click the link, complete the form and submit, and then the certificate of attendance you will receive will have the title and date of today's meeting and electronic signature. Please keep in mind, we cannot accommodate special requests for certificates of attendance. So just wanted to go through a high-level agenda here so you can know some of the things we're going to talk about today. So we're going to talk about the waiver transition and the public comment period. We're also going to go over some of the Appendix K flexibilities and the ending of those. We will have our normal Did You Know incident reporting piece, and then want to make sure that you are aware of a transportation bulletin that had went out. We will talk briefly about the innovation pilot projects, and then we have several reminders for all of you. And then again, we invite you to send webinar topics, and we will have a slide to kind of discuss that. So I'm going to jump right in. So just as a reminder, FSSA is currently going through some changes to the way they administer and who has administrative authority of various HCBS programs. So please keep in mind that this does not include DMHA waivers. This is only related to the Bureau of Disability Services, as well as the Division of Aging. And so the Division of Aging programs will continue. Those would be things like the Choice and the older adult programs that currently exist. But as we are moving towards that transition into Pathways, our managed long-term care services and supports new waiver, that will be oversaw by OMPP, and that is for individuals who are age 60 and over. So then the Division of Disabilities and Rehabilitative Services and the Bureau of Disability Services will then take over administrative oversight of the health and wellness waiver, which is the formerly known as the aged and disabled waiver, for those individuals who are 59 and under. And those do remain on fee for service. And then we will also take over administrative authority of the traumatic brain injury waiver, and that's for all ages. And we will continue to have our oversight of the community integration and habilitation waiver and the family supports waiver. So in order for us to accomplish this, we had to submit a waiver amendment. And so, waiver amendments for the health and wellness, traumatic brain injury, and community integration, habilitation, and family supports, and Pathways, they had to submit a new waiver application for their program. So those waiver amendments have been posted for public comment as of today. And so public comment period will be open from today through December 14th. In addition, there is a tribal comment period from today, November 8th, through January 7th. And then we plan to, after we receive those public comments, we will review those public comments as they come in and address those and respond to those appropriately. And then we will submit the formal submission to CMS in mid-January. And so all of this is in anticipation of having those waiver effective dates of July 1st, 2024. So we know that that's a lot of changes that are happening, and we've been talking about them for some time, but we wanted to make sure that we were offering some public comment webinars. And so there are 4 that we have scheduled, and an announcement just went out today with the links to join for those. But in those webinars, which are November 14th and November 20th, which would be for the Pathways public comment, so that's for the new waivers age 60 and over, those will occur on November 14th and November 20th. And then on November 21st, there will be a webinar over the transition of the aged and disabled waiver to the health and wellness waiver, as well as the changes that were made to the CIH and FSW waiver. And then on November 29th, it'll be a joint session where we will talk about all the various waiver amendments. And so during those public comment webinars, we will go through briefly kind of how to submit public comment, and then outline for you the major changes that have been made, and just kind of help you to see and know how to look for all the changes that were submitted or that we're proposing to submit in the amendments. So again, we hope you will join us for these sessions. And then and those links to join are in the announcement that went out via the DDRS listserv. So if you are not signed up for the DDRS listserv, I would strongly encourage you to do so. We have included a link on how to do that in the announcements as well. So to find the current versions that are out for public comment, you can find those now. I did put the link in the Q&A piece, so you can see I included the link for the DDRS public comment page as well as the FSSA public comment page. So both of those pages have all 5 of those waivers posted on there for your convenience. So if you go to that page, you will be able to, if you go to either one of the pages that I've included in the link or in the Q&A, you'll be able to find those amendments that we are proposing for changes. We have also at DDRS and BEADS created a short how-to video on how to give public comment. So this is based upon all the, just basically how to give public comment very generally. So there is no specific information regarding these amendments that were submitted. And so, but this is a good resource about how to read those waiver documents and where and how to submit public comment. So currently, I don't believe that link is working. So if you go to the link that on the BEADS page that says webinar waiver notice and public comment process, we have notified our FSSA communications team that is not currently working or accessible to individuals, and so they are working on a fix. So please check back because we do think there is good information there, especially if you're supporting individuals and families to kind of know and understand how to give public comment. It's a nice short video, as well as a slide deck will be posted to go along with that, for them to learn how to do that process. So, so we also wanted to spend some time talking today around the unwinding of the Appendix K flexibilities. So, as a reminder, all the flexibilities that were put in place related to the public health emergency are ending as of November 11th. And so on your screen, you will see what those flexibilities include. So it was the expanded language for family paid caregivers, the expanded language that was waiving the 40-hour rule, the expanded language for residential habilitation support, reimbursement for overnight staff, the flexibility in day service ratios, the alternate setting that included use of the home of a DSP, the timelines that were shifted in relation to the short-term budget requests, and then also the use of telehealth unless it's authorized in the Senate Enrolled Act 284 or Senate Enrolled Act 3 and is governed by their professional licensure requirements. So on our COVID page, on the DDARS COVID page, you can find the document that was sent out back in May, the unwinding document that goes into more detailed information around all of these things. But as a reminder, on November 11th, those flexibilities will no longer be in place. So I wanted to spend a little time talking about the virtual visits because we get a lot of questions around that and what is available to continue to do virtual visits through the waiver once those Appendix K flexibilities end. So as you are all aware, the BEADS waiver services, we are a program of Medicaid. And so therefore we are bound by the rules that are put in place through OMPP, the Office of Medicaid Policy and Planning, in the Indiana Health Coverage Programs. And so along with that, we are also bound by state and federal legislation and regulatory requirements. And so while IHCP allowed BEADS the broad use of telehealth during the public health emergency, in April of 2021, the Indiana State Legislature passed Senate Enrolled Act 3 and subsequently Senate Enrolled Act 284, which was passed in 2022, which put into law the ability of the Indiana Health Coverage Programs to only provide telehealth services by defined practitioners. And within that law, they listed out which of those defined practitioners were included. So when you look at that legislation and what services are offered through the BEADS waivers, these are the services that will continue to have some flexibility to provide virtual visits. So it would only be for occupational therapy, physical therapy, speech therapy, psychological therapy, and wellness coordination when the nurse is licensed. So, it's important that we have some good discussions with individuals and families. So when they are asking to have virtual visits that are not included within this list as an allowable activity, that we are really talking about and talking through what is their concern and what is their need, and that we are thinking about going back to the practices that we had pre-COVID. And so, the delivery of many of our waiver services were all provided in person. And now that we have to go back to that, I think sometimes it just takes some good conversation with individuals and families to kind of figure out what is it that they are seeking and wanting when they ask for virtual visits, and why it's not able to be delivered that way any longer. And so in addition to that, I would also just say, it will be important to maintain those relationships with individuals. And so if a practitioner or a person who is providing waiver services and has done so virtually through the Appendix K flexibilities, these conversations really should have happened before now, but hopefully those conversations are continuing to happen about how do we now go back to in-person and still meet your needs. So with all of that, we also issued and had a lot of questions around meeting practices and what needed to be in person and what needed to be virtual or what could be virtual. And so we have issued some additional guidance that is really around those meetings. So the quarterly meetings, the semi-annual meetings, annual meetings, and any of those kind of ad hoc meetings that tend to happen with teams that are around like pre-transition meetings or short-term budget requests, long-term budget requests, emergency meetings, those types of things. So that guidance is available on our website. And so I would suggest that you review that guidance in detail and make sure that individuals and families know and understand that guidance as well. I will reiterate that when looking at that guidance and having those meetings, it is always of the utmost importance that individuals are always present for all of their meetings. And so we really need to ensure that as teams and as case managers facilitating those teams and those meetings, that individuals are present and participating in their meeting to the greatest extent possible. So with all of this, the other piece to that is that now with the end of the public health emergency, incident reports will no longer be required for an individual who tests positive for COVID. And so, that was put into place very early on for us to be able to track and understand the incidences of COVID and the response to those. And now that is no longer necessary. So please keep in mind that effective November 11th, 2023, an incident report will no longer be required for an individual who tests positive for COVID. Also wanted to make sure that if you are not signed up to receive the IHCP bulletins, I would strongly encourage you to do so. But there was an updated bulletin, it's bulletin 202378, to reflect that modifier UI was removed as the third modifier for transportation level 1 in tables 2 and 4. So providers billing for transportation level 1 are required to list the T2002, U7, and U5, but that third modifier is not required. So I think that's an important piece for our transportation providers, and we wanted to ensure that you are aware of that billing change. So as a reminder, the Innovation Pilot Project grants were created to provide an opportunity for home and community-based service providers and non-provider community entities, individuals with disabilities and their families, to really explore new means and methods to support and address outstanding needs among people who live in Indiana receiving services from BEADS. And so these grant funds were made possible through the American Rescue Plan Act, and they are specifically targeted at improving services and supports for individuals with disabilities and their families. So the pilot projects really offered an opportunity to demonstrate new service models that can be expanded and adopted more broadly, to build that private-public partnership that expands opportunities for employment and community engagement, to really investigate some unique ways of meeting express needs in individuals seeking or receiving services from BEADS, and generally just to explore ways of improving the lives of Hoosiers with intellectual and developmental disabilities. So we wanted to encourage you to and remind you to visit the Innovation Pilot Project website, where you can see all the awarded pilot projects and some of the work that they're doing. In addition, there have been some webinars related to the IPPs that are now on that webpage. In addition, we are sharing information as it becomes available on our BEADS Facebook page, that may be opportunities for providers or individuals and families to get involved in any specific IPP pilot project. But also there are plans that really creating some videos highlighting each project over the next few weeks. And so those videos that are highlighting each one of those projects will be shared through Facebook as well. So please keep an eye out for those, as we are very excited about some of the initiatives and great work that is happening through those IPP projects. So just a few reminders that we have. So one is that, you know, with the end of the public health emergency, there is a lot of Medicaid redeterminations that are currently occurring. And so we just wanted to remind all providers and case managers to please be responsive to contacts from the Division of Family Resources regarding any Medicaid determinations, and to support individuals and families through that process to the extent that they need. And it's really vital that we maintain their Medicaid eligibility and respond to those requests through those redeterminations, so that individuals don't experience any interruption or disruption in the supports and resources they receive. Also wanted to talk about provider attestations. And so as a reminder, every 90 days, a provider system administrator must log into the BEADS portal and confirm that the provider profile information is correct and up to date. And so we really put this in place and as an opportunity for you as providers to ensure that the choice lists are reflective of the services and supports that you are able to provide, as well as updated contact information. So if individuals or families are trying to choose you as a provider, they have the ability to contact you and they have the correct information. And so it really is super important that you guys are logging in and updating that information every 90 days. In addition to that, if there is any information that needs updated at any time, you can do that within the provider profile. You do not have to wait for that 90-day time frame to go in and update your information. You can do that at any time. So if you need assistance on how to complete those provider attestations, the BEADS portal does have a user guide for providers that's located in the resource section of the BEADS portal under the user guides tab. So really would suggest that providers take some time to read through that guide if you are struggling with what is available and how to manipulate certain pieces of the portal. It really is a great guide to help you understand and know how to do all the pieces that are necessary for your services. In addition to that, since we are talking about the provider portal, we are asking providers to please check your provider referrals grid and respond to those referrals within 30 days. And so, we have a lot of individuals who are looking for a provider or a new provider, or need or have different circumstances that they are adding in services and need a provider for that service. And so we really want to ensure that those provider referrals that are sent through the system are being looked at and responded to as quickly as possible. So, we say within 30 days, but, obviously, as soon as you can do that is great. And just so you know, when you go in and you look at that provider referrals grid, you can respond to referrals with either an accept or reject, or you can request additional information. And you can do all of those things by selecting the record. So there is a section in that user guide for providers that I just talked about on the previous slide that gives you step-by-step instructions on how to view that grid and how to use that provider referrals grid. So it really is a great resource for you as a provider to be able to know, access and track the referrals that are being sent to you, and is a great resource for us as well. So also wanted to provide an update or a reminder. This isn't an update, it's more of a reminder around environmental modifications. So we've received quite a bit of questions and some concerns around different circumstances with environmental modifications. And so just a reminder that any changes made to an accepted bid must be approved by BEADS prior to the implementation. So this is really important to make sure that you have the most updated approval on what those environmental modifications are going to entail. And so changes that have not been approved by BEADS are susceptible to not being authorized for payment. So it is really very important that case managers and environmental modifications providers are making sure that prior to implementation all of those pieces are in place and accurate and up to date. Also wanted to do a reminder around EVV. And so there have been some recent IHCP bulletins that have gone out and announcements around EVV compliance. And so just as a reminder, this is a federal law that requires personal care services and home health services providers to use the electronic visit verification system to document their services rendered. And so in the IHCP bulletin, which is Bulletin 202-3145, it was announced that beginning November 15th and continuing through December 15th, IHCP will temporarily turn on EVV system edits that activate claim denials for non-compliant EVV personal care services. So for non-compliant EVV claim submissions, claims will be denied between that November 10th and November 15th and December 15th timeframe. Also, just wanted to make you aware that the final EVV edits will be activated in April 2024 to be consistent with federal requirements. And so it is really important that providers ensure that their EVV system and compliance pieces are all set and put in place. And also, as a reminder, I believe we talked about this last time, but on December 16th, the Family and Social Services Administration will temporarily turn off the edits for EVV claim denials to allow the opportunity for providers of personal care services to identify errors in their agency EVV process and system. So in the next coming months, FSSA is going to host multiple opportunities to answer questions related to EVV and support providers successfully integrating this technology into their practice. If you have any questions around EVV, you can contact Virginia Hudson at this email address. You can also contact FSSA at the evv@fssa.in.gov email, or you can also visit the EVV webpage where there is some electronic visit verification trainings available. So then lastly, just wanted to share again that, these webinars are primarily to offer an opportunity for us to share any updates or reminders or current news that is going on. Sometimes in some instances, we offer some brief training opportunities. So going into the new year, we would really love to hear what your ideas for webinar topics would be helpful to you. These are great opportunities for you to get on and to hear about the things that are important to you. And so please, if you have any topic ideas, you can share those through the BEADS Provider Services email address, which is bdsproviderservices@fssa.in.gov. So with that, those are all the updates I had. Richard, are there any questions that we could address?
Oh, let me see. I think we have 3 or 4 that we can address here, and we did have some suggestions submitted, and please know we will be reviewing those outside of the webinar. But here's 3 or 4 questions. Some case managers are stating that BMAN can't attend meetings by phone. This has always been allowed even previous to Appendix K. Is this now being restricted? BMAN is considered, they say that BMAN is considered direct service when on the telephone according to current guidelines.
Yeah, so when, if the question is regarding the meetings, so when you say BMAN can't attend meetings by phone, I'm not sure if your question is related to those annual and semi-annual meetings, or if you are talking about direct service delivery. So if you look through the guidance, so I'll answer kind of both broadly, but if you look through the meeting guidance, it really spells out in what ways providers can attend those types of meetings. And so I'm going to go back to that slide. So for quarterly meetings, it says that case managers must be present in person. For the semi-annual meetings, it says that those other members of the team can attend virtually, except for the case manager and the individual. So that would include behavior supports. And then the annual meeting, we are really encouraging all team members to be in person for those. So I would suggest, going back and looking at that meeting guidance to get more detail around that. If you are asking in regards to the actual service delivery of behavior support services, those do have to occur now in person. If you are working directly one-on-one with that individual. And so that is now what the requirements for behavior support services. I hope that answered your question.
All right, this question is a slight variation on that, but I want to make sure we clarify because I could see where some confusion may happen. If a music therapist or BMAN attend a meeting virtually, can they bill for that?
So you would have to look at, and I apologize, I would have to look directly at what the reimbursable activities for both of those services. But I would suggest, because I don't want to give a incomplete answer here. So I would suggest looking at the reimbursable activities and the limitations around those, both of those services, to determine whether or not attending meetings are billable activities.
All right. This question is regarding rate changes. It says, we have been notified by several case managers that some budgets are now over the allocation for a person's waiver, with the rates increasing and the cap for the waiver not being high enough to accommodate for those increases. It says that some case managers have stated that those budgets are needing to be reduced and services cut immediately, and some are stating that this doesn't need to happen until the following CCB year. And they are asking for clarification.
Sure. So I think, depending upon if you, so the short answer is that any changes needing, any services that need to be reduced or altered in regards to the budget increase, those can occur during the next plan year. So currently, we have a mechanism in place, and we have provided guidance that, so for individuals who are on the CIH waiver, if the cost of their services is over their allocation, once we did the rate increase, then teams can discuss and talk about putting in a short-term budget request to make up for the need to continue to provide those services as outlined in their service plan. And for individuals on the family support waiver, we would ask that those services, they don't have to be stopped immediately, but when you are looking at the next year's plan, that all of those services will have to be delivered and approved within their allocation. So basically, based upon the individual and their circumstance and the type of waiver they are having, there is nothing that would have to be cut immediately. There are mechanisms in place to ensure that we didn't have to do that to individuals and families, but conversations ongoing for their next plan year need to include what do services need to look like to be provided within that allocation that is allotted to them.
Right, and this is a case management question. What is the case manager's responsibility when an individual has lost Medicaid because of a redetermination issue? And it states, and providers are refusing to service the individual because they are not able to bill. Or if an individual loses Medicaid, is there a point that BEADS gets involved to work with Medicaid?
Sure. So case manager's responsibility is always to support individuals and families with paid and non-paid supports. And so that is waiver services, that's Medicaid services, that's, any types of services and supports that they are receiving, paid or non-paid. So I would say, you may not be able to fix the problem for them, but what we would hope is that case managers are supporting families to know how to get their Medicaid back in good standing and to get their status, to get their redetermination reviewed or completed so that they can maintain their Medicaid eligibility, as well as that, which then in turn maintains their waiver. Individuals and families and case managers, if they continue to run into issues with those redeterminations, our BEADS district offices are able to help support to the greatest extent that they can as well. So, please feel free to reach out to the BEADS district office and if there's any documentation or support that the individual needs in order to go through that redetermination or to get their Medicaid services reestablished, the Beads District Office can assist in that.
All right, I've got one related to EVV clarification. They ask, does this mean that DSPs submitting shifts in EVV non-compliance starting November 15th will have their shifts denied?
That would be a question that I would suggest submitting to the EVV, to the FSSA EVV email box. That's not something I think we can provide guidance on. And so please utilize that EVV mailbox to get that question answered.
Okay. All right, this question asks, isn't the definition of virtual in the new meeting guidance to be seen on camera and not phone call?
Yes, there is language in the meeting guidance that defines virtual, which does not include a phone call.
Okay. And let's see, we had a quarterly meeting for an individual today, and the parent, who is the individual, the adult individual's legal guardian, stated that as the guardian, it is up to her if the individual attends the meeting or not. And she said, or they said no, she did not want her child in the meeting, and they are asking for guidance on that situation.
Yeah, so in the situations where the individual has a guardian, they are both, the individual and the guardian are part of the team, and both of them should be present for those meetings. And so so I would just suggest that the team really talk to the legal guardian about why they don't want the individual included in that meeting, and be able to address those reasons why, so that individual can participate to the greatest extent that they are able. And so that may mean that the individual, is only there for part of the meeting because they don't have the wherewithal to be in an entire team meeting. But anything that is talked about or decisions that are made about that individual should include that individual. And case managers and teams really need to reiterate that with legal guardians, that we should be amplifying that individual's voice and ensuring that they are part of those meetings and decisions to the best of their ability.
All right, we have a couple more here. BMAN providers are often called to handle an emergency situation via cell phone. The question is, are they not supposed to be answering their phones and providing those emergency services since they can no longer bill for them, is the question.
No, I think there's been some misunderstanding. So there are, yes, you should still answer the phone call. We are not saying that, providers or behavior consultants should not answer the phone when an individual calls them. And so, there are going to be obviously those circumstances where where that happens and they need to do that. So that is the difference between, looking at providing like those direct skill building type services one-on-one in person versus handling those emergency situations.
Great. And I think there's one more here that we can handle today. It says, can we bill for patients who have been cared for while in the hospital?
So this question is, so what I would suggest is that you go to our policy page, and we have a policy that outlines in what circumstances and how providers can bill for services provided to individuals while they are in acute care hospital stays. So that was nothing to do with Appendix K or anything like that. That is a policy that was put in place as a response to the CARES Act. And so we do have, if you look at DDRS policy page, we have a detailed policy that outlines what that can look like for providers who may need to provide some supports to individuals who are in acute care stay hospitals or acute care hospital stays.
All right, I believe that's all we can handle for today.
All right. Well, thank you very much for your participation and for your time. And please, feel free to send any questions to that Beads Help email box. And we look forward to seeing you next year. Enjoy your holidays.